At about 11:30 on a Saturday morning, a six-story building in the middle of Singapore stood exactly where it had stood for 15 years. There was a bank on the ground floor, a nightclub upstairs, a hotel above that. It was busy. It was completely unremarkable. And then, in less than a minute, all 6 floors dropped straight down into their own footprint. 50 people were buried in the rubble. 17 were pulled out alive. 33 did not come out. What makes this one strange isn't a bomb or a fire or bad ground. Investigators chased all of those and ruled them out. The building came down for a reason that sounds almost too simple to be true. From the day it was designed, it had never been strong enough to hold up its own weight. This is the Hotel New World collapse. And this is the chain that pulled it down. The building was properly called the Lien Yak Building, put up in 1971. 6 stories of reinforced concrete. A bank at street level, offices, a nightclub, and the Hotel New World occupying the top floors. For 15 years, it did everything a building is supposed to do. It stood there, held people up, and gave no obvious sign that anything was wrong. And that's the unsettling part of this story. There was no dramatic warning years in advance. No public fight. No whistleblower. The flaw was silent, sealed inside the concrete, waiting. To understand why it fell, you have to go back to a single mistake made at a drawing board before the first floor was ever poured. Every building has to be designed to carry 2 kinds of weight. There's the live load, the changeable stuff, the people, the furniture, the water in the tanks, everything that comes and goes. And there's the dead load, the weight of the building itself. The concrete, the steel, the floors, the walls. The permanent, unavoidable weight of the structure just existing. The calculations for Hotel New World were not done by a qualified structural engineer. They were done by a draftsman who wasn't qualified to do them. And in doing them, he made an error so fundamental it's hard to believe it survived. He calculated the live load and left the dead load out almost entirely. The building was designed to hold up the people inside it, but not to hold up itself. The single largest weight it would ever have to carry, its own concrete skeleton, was never properly in the sum. The first link was an empty space in a calculation, and it was there from the very first day. A design that's already at the edge has no room for anything else to go wrong. Hotel New World then got a second problem stacked onto the first. To bring the cost of construction down, the building was put up using materials and workmanship that gave away what little margin a sound design would have had. On a building with a healthy safety margin, cutting a few corners on materials might be absorbed. On a building whose columns were already carrying loads right at their limit from day one, there was nothing left to give away. The second link took a structure with no margin and shaved it thinner still. Then, over 15 years, the building slowly got heavier. Air conditioning units were added, a bank vault, tiling, fittings, a nightclub's worth of equipment. None of it dramatic on its own, the ordinary accumulation of a building being used and improved over time. On a normal building, this is fine, it's exactly what the dead load margin exists to absorb. But Hotel New World had no such margin, because the dead load had never been counted. Every unit of extra weight was pushing columns that were already at their limit further past it. The building was being loaded toward a cliff edge that no one knew was there. The third link was time itself, quietly turning the screw. A structure this close to failure does not always go silent to the end. In the days before the collapse, there were signs, cracks, concrete showing distress. By some accounts, columns had begun to fail in the period leading up to that Saturday. The building physically shedding load from members that could no longer take it onto members that also couldn't. These were the building telling anyone who could read the signs that it was running out of strength. But nobody in a position to act read them as what they were, the final warnings of a structure at its limit. Business carried on underneath them. The fourth link was a warning delivered in the only language a building has, and heard by no one. There was no trigger on the morning of the 15th of March. No explosion, no earthquake, no single dramatic event. That is precisely what makes it chilling. The building was simply occupied on an ordinary Saturday, doing what it did every day. The columns had finally been pushed to the exact point where they could carry no more. Around 11:25 in the morning, they let go, and with no reserve strength and no alternative path for the load, there was nothing to arrest what followed. The fifth link wasn't a decision at all. It was the absence of one, the moment 15 years of unpaid structural debt came due, on a day chosen by nothing but arithmetic. The collapse took under a minute. All 6 floors came straight down, trapping 50 people. The rescue that followed became one of the defining moments in Singapore's history. Soldiers, firefighters, and specialist rescuers from as far as Britain and Ireland crawling into unstable voids in the rubble to reach survivors, some of them tunneling by hand for days. 17 people were brought out alive, some after being trapped for days. 33 were not. For a wealthy, modern, well-run city, the idea that a building could simply fall down of its own accord was a profound shock. Because Singapore refused to accept a comfortable explanation, the truth actually came out. The inquiry ruled out the rumors. No gas explosion, no bad foundations, no sabotage. The concrete that was tested turned out to meet standards. The failure was in the design. The dead load had been omitted, and the building had never been capable of standing. The finding was almost unbearably simple. The most basic requirement of structural engineering, that a building must be able to hold up its own weight, had not been met, because the person who did the sums was not qualified to do them and made an error no qualified engineer. Singapore's response reshaped how the country builds. New building control laws followed, with far stricter requirements for who is allowed to design a structure and how independently those designs must be checked. The reform was built directly on the 33 people who died, proving that one empty space in a calculation, left unchecked for 15 years, is enough to bring a building down. There's no single monster here. There's a chain. Let an unqualified hand do the maths and leave out the building's own weight. Cheapen the materials on a design with no margin left. Load it heavier every year. Miss the warnings when the building finally starts to fail. And then just occupy it on an ordinary Saturday until the arithmetic ran out. 5 links, and the first one was invisible from the day the doors opened. The disaster is almost never the first thing that goes wrong. It's the last link in a chain of decisions, each one reasonable to the person who made it, that quietly removed every defense until nothing stood between an ordinary day and catastrophe. That's the chain. And there is always a next one.